Hey Jon2xu, this is Cimbolic. This is a video response to your two video responses on searching for truth. John, I was thinking, if I may call you John, please excuse me if I mayn't. Uh, I, while I was watching your videos, it made me think of the last video conversation we had about free thinking. Since I watched your video on that, you set a question in my mind. You'd asked, how do we, how do we become uh, more free thinking? I've been thinking about it ever since. It's been rolling around in my head, and I realized while watching these two videos that you did here, that I think the best ways for us to become free thinkers is, of course, to identify what our assumptions are, or what our not political, our cultural dogmas are, and the things we were programmed with, and the assumptions that are. Sometimes we can't see those things, and the best ways to do that are to talk to people from other cultures, within the United States. YouTube's good for that. Um, to travel outside the United States and talk to people, because then you're actually immersed in a different culture, and your own assumptions and your own cultural practices become really obvious to you, because they're put into high relief to your observation when you see people behaving differently, thinking differently. And then also, I think, anthropology, I mean, studying different cultures, you can do that academically too, and just get books on different cultures, by anthropologists. That's fascinating, maybe a little too academic, not as real as, experiencing someone, and sharing time and space with them, but still real valuable. Kind of like comparative religions, I think, are valuable. That's a good one. Anyway, so I think those are the best techniques, rather than just going through some, philosophic exercise, and then when we identify our assumptions and these beliefs that we have, that we sort of have not questioned before, then we need techniques, I think, to bracket them off and to figure out how to analyze them and assess them to determine whether there's something to keep or to reject, or something to keep just with an understanding that it's relative to other cultures. So thanks for that, John, because I hadn't thought about that. I think you're a good speaker. I'll tell you why. You are sincere, and you're open-minded, and you're sincere, and you can also you can feel and listen to yourself as you speak. You can hear where you're kind of going, and what I think. Well, not necessarily what voices are. You can hear in your voice what you're enacting. So I've seen you hear when you'll say, "Oh, now I'm sounding judgmental," or "Oh, now this, now that." So you're able to hear and observe yourself, and I think that's great, because in your very way of speaking, you're exploring yourself and questioning things. I think that's great. It's rare, and it takes a lot of sensitivity to do that, I think, in my opinion. I'll talk about opinions in a sec if I don't run out of time. Um, so that's good, and you're open-minded. That's and that's a formula for success. Um, it's a hard road, though, huh? Isn't it? It is. But I think that's good. Don't worry about rambling. I ramble too. I mean, when we ramble, we're kind of wandering. Our culture, one thing our culture doesn't value is wandering. They want us to be predictable. But wandering, some cultures, wandering is real important. And I love it, man, because we discover new things that we would not have discovered if we'd have just followed a linear path based on what we know and what we think. It's just like getting lost driving. All of a sudden you're in a town, or you find a little street or something that you would have never found if you were planning that trip, or, if you tried to find it on purpose, you wouldn't have found it. Same thing with conversation, I think. When we wander, we discover things, new little landscapes we stumble on inside ourselves, that I think there's nothing like it, man. You got to be part gypsy. You got to be part gypsy, I think. Which kind of segues into what you were talking about, getting on and just responding on a video rather than stopping and doing a lot of research first. That's the way I am. I mean, I might look up a little point if I want to talk about a little point. if I'm going to include that in what I'm doing. And I do organize, like when I'm responding, you notice I have notes. I'm always looking over here because I have notes I make, so I make sure I hit all the points. But when I'm making a video, even with that, I'm just responding, because I think if you study too much and you do too much research, you end up killing off or wounding the spontaneity. And to me, the spontaneity is the most important thing, because that's where you really get in touch with what you're really feeling. I think you're spontaneous, and I think part of spontaneity is maybe what seems like rambling at times, because you're in a new land, or a new sea, or what have you. So so I think it's good that it's spontaneous. And as far as opinions go, man, I don't, we can have opinions. Like you're mentioning, having an opinion about a war is like a current event. We don't need to really study a lot on it. One of the great benefits of growing older is you've had a lot of those current event experiences and a lot of time to put things together in life and notice patterns and mosaics that you wouldn't have, 3 decades ago or 4 decades ago. So we can talk in a more informed way without having to do like tons of research, unless we're going to really argue a point like, what is a neutron, something in quantum mechanics, something technical, then we got to do our research, or if we're really going to, want people to follow us and believe us, we must do our research. I also don't really care so much about being right. I like it when people point out that I'm wrong for the same reason, that it gives me an opportunity to stop and, say, wow. In fact, one of my favorite phrases is, "Thank you for disabusing me of my misconception." I love that phrase. It's so articulate too. Thank you. I want to talk about dreams, man, because you were talking about, as time goes by, future truths revealing themselves that we don't know right now. I think that's so true, and I also think there's a past factor. I was thinking one day that, we have all these dreams. We go through all these experiences in dreams, wild experiences sometimes that we would never go through, situations that we have to cope with that we wouldn't go through in normal life usually. But most of our dreams we forget. So actually, we have this internal repository of tons of experience and tons of resources, not that they weigh anything, but large quantities of resources that we don't even realize we have. And I think it's real empowering to know that, that if we look forward and say, will I be able to cope with certain things that come down the road, that we probably can. We may think, based on our memory and our assessment of what we know and don't know, we may think, well, something might be difficult to cope with, or wow, what if something happens by surprise? When in actuality, we're not aware that we have a lot more resources to bring to it. So I think that I like that. I like that idea that we have more resources than we know. We've already been through a lot more than we think we have. If I had a crystal ball, I like them too. And I had a choice of looking into the past or the future, I would look in the past. I really want to know what's in the past because it's been distorted by so many people, and I'd really like to know. I'd really like to see, and so I'm just fascinated with the past. The future, I don't think I would look in it. I don't think I would look at the future. It would be vain curiosity, I think. It could take a lot of forms. It's more important, I think, to know where we're coming from now and who we are now. But it's an interesting question, a good after-dinner discussion question. Let me just think. Last 30 years, I could talk about the last 30 years. Just that I read some old Greek historian, Thucydides, he wrote in 400 BC, talking about the wars, the Peloponnesian Wars, attacking Sicily and attacking the Spartans. And man, they were making the same exact speeches, word for word, in the Senate in Greece about spreading democracy, etc., etc. It's really interesting. Maybe things go up and down, huh? Yeah, getting people calling, ignoring insults. I try to ignore all insults. I occasionally get attacked and I respond. I do defend others quite a bit. Sometimes I think the way to diffuse people who are trying to be real experts or coming off kind of aggressively hostile or aggressively right is to sort of switch to a sort of Socratic method, and just like ask questions, ask little questions that pry it open and let them just burn off their ego. And I've seen sometimes they'll actually start a conversation with you, and it starts to be a good conversation, but I'll have to ask a kind of a little question, or sometimes even a slightly humorous question. But as long as I'm asking questions and not meeting them with an opposing opinion, I find that sometimes they let down all that defensive or aggressive stuff. So that's what I'm trying to do, though I do sometimes get sucked into debates and stuff. Mainly if I'm attacked. I'm running out of time, man, John. I kind of wanted to keep this down to one video for you, but I got 3 seconds left. Thank you so much for videos. I really dig them. You're great, and let's both make more. Okay. Thanks, John. Bye bye.